This is the facsimile of the Fumier used to persecute Christians. You see the image of Virgin Mary and Jesus, Pieta image. They would line the villagers up by the beach and place this down and ask everyone to step on the Fumier. And depending on how you reacted, they could tell if you were a Christian or not. So you get dragged into interrogation, history of the martyrs, literally associated with this, but also history of those betrayed, right? Now, Westerners have trouble, like what's the big deal? You just step on an image, But to the Japanese, it's very effective. Japanese culture is very highly visual. And what is depicted is true. You're stepping on Jesus or Virgin Mary. It becomes real to them at this point. Endo, who wrote Silence, said that I'm a child of failed generations. And it kind of makes sense because if you think about it, if you're martyrs, you're likely not to have a family, but thousands, even millions have betrayed their own God in Japan. Either that or you're on the other side. You forced the interrogation to happen. You forced Christians to come out of the villages and you tortured them and you put them through suffering. If you're Japanese alive today, you carry that in your DNA. You're either failed Christian or you're one perpetrating this religious persecution for many, many years and many generations. So Endo wrote Silence as a witness to this divide, knowing that he is a child of failed faith, right? So it's very hard for Western minds to comprehend this. We live in, especially in America, this triumphant culture. Every church you go to almost entirely is dependent on this idea of winning, this idea of gaining faith. Even grace gets distorted as something that is triumphant. Well, what happens in culture where that's not possible? Can faith survive? Is everything we read about the abundance of God in creation and invitation to a great dance of the new creation, is that all empty talk at that point when you step on the Fumier and you betrayed your master over and over? When you're in this realm of prophetic imagination. And what happens is what you're writing about, what you're painting, and what you intuiting, you realize you're being prophetic to the future of what you're going to experience yourself. It's really scary, but it's true. I've experienced this so many times. I didn't want to write Silence and Beauty because I knew it would be traumatic. I would have to visit my trauma of 9/11, trauma of tsunami, what happened in 3/11, Japan afterwards. And I didn't want to write it because I felt something would trigger in me. I can get into this very dark shame cycle. And writing this book was prophetic. It anticipated what was to come, that I would have to step on Fumiers. Things that I thought I'd never have to do. And yet it anticipated and prepared me for that. That even though I felt like I was failing myself, I was failing God, but that it was a new beginning. And so I hold this as a sacred object, because there's some power in how we can narrate our future. But we have to be willing to embrace our brokenness. As Endo said, I didn't write a book about the silence of God. I wrote a book about the voice of God speaking through suffering and pain and silence. So how do we live knowing that our traumas can define us? We can be victims of that. We can even feel like we are the perpetrators of evil in the world. Maybe we've done things that we regret. But that's not your story. That's not my story. If you can accept that brokenness, we're able to see beyond. Ironically, paradoxically, it's by entering through the cracks and fissures of our lives, our brokenness, knowing that we have stepped on fumiers of lives, betrayed people, our loved ones, our God. But finally, we're free by the grace of God to listen to the real story. That Jesus have come to liberate us from the bondage to decay and bring us into the glorious freedom that is present as we go through our lives, as we repeatedly, right? We have to do this repeatedly. We have to have a community of brokenness that leads into joy. But it's a theological statement to me. Theology of making statement to me to have fun, to have joy, to have hope in the midst of darkness.